M&T Bank presents CEOs You Should Know, powered by iHeartMedia.
In celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, let's meet Antonio Tijerino. He is the president and CEO for the Hispanic Heritage Foundation based in Washington, D.C. It's a nonprofit that helps set up future Latino leaders for success in the classroom and at work. Before we talk more about the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, I first asked Antonio to talk a little bit about himself, where he's from, and his origin story.
I was born in Managua, Nicaragua. At about 7 years old, I came over to Washington, D.C., 6910 Yuma Street, right in Tenley Circle. I drive by it every single day, and I tell my kids this is where I landed when I came to Washington, D.C. and to the United States from Nicaragua. It was an adjustment, considering I didn't speak a word of English, which is a cruel joke because my Spanish isn't so great anymore. But at one point, I had to learn English from scratch. And my hero at that time, and continues to be a source of inspiration, is Roberto Clemente. And it was a kind of almost like an imaginary but real friend that I was able to lean on as kids made fun of me, or as I grew into my identity and my sense of who I am. It's always great when you have a role model that comes from your environment that you can lean on and identify with.
I couldn't agree more, Antonio. I'm a big sports guy, so I know all about Clemente and what a great baseball career he had. And he was an extraordinary person, too, and did so many wonderful things off of the baseball diamond. With all that said, it must have been a lot of culture shock. No English, and 7 years old and moving to Washington, D.C. I think we can call you a lifer now because you've been here a long time. But you also went to school in the area, too, didn't you?
I did. I'm Tony Terrapin, Tony 202. You can give me any moniker you want. I am a D.C. guy all the way through. My kids know who Chuck Brown is, who Marvin Gaye is, who Duke Ellington is. They have been steeped in the unique Washington, D.C., DMV culture from the time that they were born. And I take a lot of pride in being from Washington, D.C.
That's wonderful, and I know you do too. So we're here to talk a lot about what you do as president and CEO of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. Almost 21 years, Antonio, which is an extraordinary 2-decade-plus run. And I always like to ask our leaders about this, about what I'll tell you this. I know about your background and all the extraordinary things that you've ever done in marketing and all the other really cool things that have led up to your job now as president and CEO of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. I know what they saw in you from your resume and your background and your passion, but what did you see in the Hispanic Heritage Foundation that you wanted to join them?
I have to tell you that when the guy who hired me is Dr. Pedro Jose Greer, which is the greatest guy I've ever met. He's a Presidential Medal of Freedom winner. He's a MacArthur Genius Award. He's a physician. He hired me, and nobody else saw what he saw because they were all like, why are you hiring this guy? My background was in communications, and I did it in really cool places like Nike and Fannie Mae Foundation and Burson Marsteller and Conan Wolf after going to University of Maryland as a journalism student. But what I saw was an opportunity to work for someone that was telling me that he believes in me and for me to do everything I need to do to serve the Latino community around the country and beyond. And it was very simple. As long as I focused that this is a service job, that my leadership is servitude. And so he played football at University of Florida, offensive lineman, and he said, I'm going to be your lineman. You carry that ball, and I'm going to clear pass for you, but it's up to you to get into the end zone. And I took it very seriously. So what I saw in the Hispanic Heritage Foundation was an opportunity to take a wonderful event at the Kennedy Center and on national television, but build around it and develop actually the foundation part of it, which is in education, in workforce development, certainly in culture, in identity, and social impact. And so the programs started coming, the Latinos on Fast Track program, all of the other efforts we do to teach 100,000 kids how to code all over the country so that we're more prepared for those jobs that America needs for us to fill. That's a value proposition. We're able to go into areas and be creative with Minecraft. We just launched the first Latinx themed game in Minecraft's history, which is the most popular video game in the world. And 30 million kids around the world will be playing it in 30 different languages over the first year. And we're featured in this game, not just promoting our culture, but featured as problem solvers, as part of the solution, which is what we're trying to do through the organization. And we're also putting people in a position to access the jobs that'll be transformational within their families and our communities, and dealing with identity issues to make sure that everybody understands the Latino community is not monolithic. We are like everyone, and everyone is like us. And how are we more respectful within our own community? We should know better after the way sometimes we're treated, to be able to treat our own community and the diversity within our own community, as well as other communities that we need to ally with. So it's been an amazing journey. I've been able to have a board that's completely supportive, and a staff that puts up with me adding on, seems like every minute, another project that we're doing. But it's a real blessing to be able to work with the people that I'm working with, and with our sponsors and partners like iHeart. And I really appreciate the platform that you give us.
Well, thank you, Antonio. And thank you for sharing all of them. We have so much more to talk about, specifically when it comes to the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, culture, challenges, success stories. But I do want to talk about mission statement, the overall, just to make our listeners very clear about what you and your staff do there. What is that mission statement for you?
For us, I want to start by saying that our community leads us. It's not the other way around. We listen to our community, which is why we have these charlas that we do, where we gather our community and they do 5 minutes on any subject that they want, or on a particular theme, so that we are able to support our community in a better way by listening. We don't do panels like we used to. We do open space, and we do the Kiva process, so that our community is able to give us guidance and priorities as to where we're going. Same with the research that we do. We have a leadership institute that's based on what our community wants to do. And we're just able to give them the resources, give them the confidence, give them the connectivity. But ultimately, our community leads us. It's not the other way around. But our mission statement is based on education, workforce, identity, social impact through culture and leadership. And we try to be as innovative as possible in doing that. And a lot of times that's listening to the community so they can give us the guidance as to where we need to go. But it's very malleable and adaptable. And that's what we have to be when you have a dynamic community that you're serving. 1 in 3 Latinos is under 18 years of age. There's 62 million of us. 1 in 4 students across the entire country is Latino right now. But our representation beyond those numbers, look, our GDP right now, just announced last week, is the 5th largest in the world. We have Latinos in America have a bigger GDP than India and the UK and other countries. But what do we do with that? Our representation in media isn't where it should be. Our representation in Hollywood, our representation in finance, in tech, in education. Less than 9% of teachers are Latino, yet we're 1 out of 4 students in the country. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of putting Latinos in a position, putting our community in connecting with each other to build that social capital that'll help raise us all. And again, addressing issues within our own community, where we need to be able to be more supportive and inclusive, and calling out our own community in terms of racism and sexism and homophobia and the disabled community and Islamophobia and sexism and anti-Semitism, that we need to make sure that our activism starts at home, at our kitchen tables, and then in the workforce, inside boardrooms and inside the classroom as well, to be able to advocate on behalf of all of us, because we are so diverse. That's the beauty of our community.
Well stated, and thank you for sharing all that. I did want you maybe share another success story. The Minecraft story is extraordinary, with the coding and working in those areas with Hispanic and Latino to give them opportunities that they might not necessarily have. And with a world-famous video game is just extraordinary. So I love that story. But you've been there, as we mentioned off the top, for over 2 decades. What's another success story that you and your staff are really super proud of?
It's every single day, Dennis. The texts that I get from young people that over the last 21 years are either on my board or giving me guidance, or are now my contacts as corporate partners. We're going to be heading off to San Francisco to meet with the a young man that is started his own company and is now the darling of Forbes, and he hasn't forgotten where he came from either. So it's a remarkable feeling, and people ask me after 21 years, how do you keep doing this? I get energized every single time I get a text or an email or a call or see someone from my network that is giving me ideas. And I have 6 of my past youth awardees and lofties on my board, including my chair. So that's one area. The other is on policy issues and other areas where I have these private and public sectors coming to us to be able to deliver their messages, products, ideas, and we're able to support. That is a privilege whenever somebody comes to us for help in terms of getting information out, in terms of making sure that we deal with digital discrimination so that all Latinos are on same par in terms of access to technology and access to Wi-Fi in order to be educated, in order to be able to get jobs or access to healthcare. Those are really important issues that are on the policy side, on the macro side. And that's part of being in DC, that we have that kind of exposure, as well as making sure that our workforce reflects the communities that make up America. And also, I have to tell you that a lot of this gets very personal. Now, I came here from Nicaragua, and so when I'm going down to the border and working with Sister Norma Pimentel in McAllen, Texas, and in Reynosa, Mexico, we're able to support the work that she's doing with our migrant communities on the border, and then here in Washington, D.C., which is made up of so many migrants and Central Americans, where they end up as their destination, sometimes being bused, obviously, as some stunt, using our community as some kind of pawns in some political game. But we're here to welcome them in Washington, D.C. as they get dropped off at Union Station or anyone else through our partnerships with groups like Carecen and Mary Center and Ayuda and on Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. We're able to be part of the solution everywhere we go, whether it's in tech, whether it's welcoming our immigrant communities, or whether it's in the financial space or in entrepreneurship, where we have a program with TikTok, where we want to make sure that Latino small businesses like El Tamarindo and others get the funding and access to capital that they need, as well as other resources. So we're able to communicate those messages. And I have a podcast called Fritanga, where I'm able to tell these stories and give a microphone to our community, as well as highlight some of these amazing leaders that are having such an impact, not just on our communities, but on me. I get inspired every single day. There's no end to the inspiration that I get.
I think after hearing all that, our listeners and myself are wondering when Antonio has time to sleep and take a little rest, but I don't think it's too often out there. But absolutely extraordinary, Antonio. Now, our listeners and I also probably caught you talking about the Hispanic Heritage Youth Awards. The 24th annual is coming up in a little bit, and there's a deadline in November. I will talk about that in just a second. But I also want to talk about challenges. As we've mentioned, you've been there for over 2 decades. We all have personal challenges in our life, but also professionally. I'm curious about a challenge that you're working on currently that is still a little frustrating, but you know you're going to get to the goal line eventually. But what are maybe a challenge or two that you're working on right now?
So right now, and thank you for asking that, because looking forward, again, we always want to be adaptable and meet the needs of the community because they lead us. Mental health. I am really focused in 2023, and we're building out the apparatus to be able to launch a major campaign. We've always been dealing with it. It's never fallen off our radar. But more than ever, we need to make sure that our community has access to not just resources, but also to be able to understand what they're going through, especially after what we've been dealing with COVID, where we've been more likely to put ourselves at risk, as well as going forward with the inflation as it is right now, and with the challenges that we have just existing in a lot of cases. So mental health is one. I'm also very proud of projects that we've taken on with Monica Ramirez, for instance, where we had something called #Masks for Farm Workers, where 2.2 million masks were put on farm workers to protect them during COVID. So as long as you're actionable, anything can happen. Everything you can imagine can be real if you add action to it. And that's my big challenge, is that we have to be more actionable in the work that we're all doing. It just can't be talking about the problems. We actually have to take action to address these issues and be collaborative, and be open enough to listen to the community in order to better serve the community.
Agreed. We did tease it a little bit. I know it's one of the big 10 polls that you have, 24th Annual Hispanic Heritage Youth Awards. Tell us about that.
So the Youth Awards are the main way that we access the talent that then we're able to send out and teach 100,000 kids how to code. When you've been doing it for 24 years, that span is between 15 and 40-year-olds. And we have amazing stories to tell from these youth. Every year we get 30,000 applicants from all 50 states plus Puerto Rico and, of course, Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And I couldn't apply to my own program. Their GPAs are through the roof. They have countless hours of community service. And I think about some of those success stories. Like one of the board members is from D.C., Tatiana, went to school in Up County, and now she's working at Google in New York and is on my board and continues to be involved with our Youth Awards. So the Youth Awards program is across 10 different sectors, including media and entertainment, which I know is something that we need more Dennises out there. And so all the young people that apply to it then get selected. 300 of them get selected, including from the greater DC area. And then we track them as they go to college, and then they get and into their careers. And I can tell you that for sure. If you saw my text, in terms of how we stay in touch with people, because we want to make sure that they're in those career paths and leadership roles going forward, especially considering the entry point are stellar students that are involved in their community and are specifically targeting a particular area of expertise. They also work in our leadership institute called Loft Leadership Institute, that it's a deep dive into their sector and across 10 sectors. And it's also building social capital so that an Antonio knows a Dennis as he goes through college and as they go through their careers, and you build those relationships. Normally, those happen by happenstance. We want to make sure that it's more purposeful, and at 17, 18 years old, you have a strong connection with others that are interested in your sector, whether it's tech, healthcare, education, sustainability, media and entertainment, engineering, whatever it is, that you now can build relationships that you can count on each other going forward from all over the country. So that's kind of the Youth Award process. And then from there, that's how Loft works, because it's based on this talent pool that is now over 350,000 that we're able to place at different companies and in government agencies in terms of our workforce, and also mobilize them on various issues that matter to our community as well.
Antonio, we'll give the website at the end of our interview and all your social media channels, but there is a deadline for the Hispanic Heritage Youth Awards, the 24th annual, and that's in mid-November, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And then, look, it's going to be really exciting, too, because we work very closely with the NFL, and last year we hosted one of the categories is sports and fitness.
Oh, wow.
And we were able to host kids at the Super Bowl in
huge.
LA, and this year it'll be in Phoenix. And we're also providing educational grants, but they're flexible because those grants can also be used for an idea or a project. And the youth, we want them not just to be a great student and go to college and have a great career. What we're trying to do is how can each one of our youth awardees affect thousands, 10,000s, hundreds of thousands of others, millions of others. That's the real impact. It's not just helping one kid at a time. It's being able to position that kid to help multitude of others and radiate that brilliance and ganas that we need for our community and our country to move forward.
I love it. It's absolutely extraordinary what you're doing just with the awards. It's just wonderful, the opportunities that you're giving Hispanic and Latino kids, these things that maybe they wouldn't have a chance to do and learn. And I just think it's absolutely wonderful. More to come. I did want to ask you about one more thing, and that's about voting. And we're not here to get political, but it was very clear that you stated off the top about how many Hispanic Latinos are in every major metropolitan market throughout this country. And their vote means a lot. to whatever side they're voting on. With all that said, I'm wondering, when it comes to the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, is there an education program to say, hey, listen, this is how you vote, this is where you can vote, and this is why you should vote?
Yes, and it's critical that a lot of our hopes and dreams and activism starts at the ballot box, which I'm quoting Maria Teresa Kumar, who also lives in the greater Washington area and is the head of Voto Latino. I remember when she started that organization, and she's had 250,000 young Latinos register to vote through the work of Voto Latino. So we work with her in terms of civic engagement and with other organizations, Mi Familia Vota and others, that we're able to promote those messages. And like you said, Dennis, I don't care who you vote for. Just be informed and understand that you actually have a stake in where our country goes, where your county goes, where your state goes, where your city goes. So it's important that you're active and able to participate, because that is one of the most basic forms of activism and leadership, is to be civically involved with your community. And we have a lot at stake as Latinos, and it's important that you find out who best represents your values and your ideals and your purpose.
Couldn't agree more, Antonio. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. As we wrap up our conversation and put a bow on everything we talked about, and boy, I don't know if people can tell, but I could talk to you for a couple hours. I'm inspired by what you're doing, man. It's just extraordinary. With all that said, is there something that you want our listeners to know about the Hispanic Heritage Foundation that we haven't yet talked about?
Well, one thing is that this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and when Hispanic Heritage Month was first established by actually the Reagan administration in 1989, it was turned from a week into a month. And our Hispanic Heritage Awards that we do at the Kennedy Center and on PBS, it was the platform that was created in order to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. So we're very proud of that. But everyone needs to know that we're Latino year-round, not just during a month. And it's important that we have that cultural relevance and exchange and possibility and hope as a community year round. I'd like to end with a challenge that we need to be more impatient with the changes that we want to see. We need to be more impatient with our migrant communities being villainized and used as political footballs. We need to be more impatient with some of the issues that we're dealing with in terms of education, representation, in the workforce, what opportunities exist, not being as connected to technology as we should be. All of these issues are critical, and they're critical right now. And so it's important that we look at everything as an action ready to be taken. And lastly, everything you can imagine can be real. I just want everyone to understand that there's a power in that thought, that naivete, that if you imagine something, it's not a huge stretch to turn it into a reality, but you need to have action and collaboration and a little bit of audacity and taking chances, because otherwise nothing's going to happen if you're not, if you don't take chances and try to make that imagination a reality.
Well said. Antonio, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time, and I'm just going to say it again. I'm inspired by all that you and your team are doing there at the Hispanic Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., the DMV, and across the United States. And I know there's a lot of work ahead, but what you've done in the last 21 years has been extraordinary. I've used that word a couple times in our interview, but it just all the balls that are in the air that you're juggling and making a difference out there with the Hispanic and Latino community is you're an angel, man, of what you're doing out there. And I know that you love it, you're passionate, you're smart about this, and you're moving forward each and every time. This is just such a cool conversation. I just can't thank you enough for your valuable time, continued success, and thank you so much for joining us on CEOs You Should Know.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Todos estamos en la lucha. Appreciate you.
And before we go, website, social media channels, everything else that people can follow you and your team.
Well, it's www.hispanicheritage.org in terms of the website. And you can look for me, Antonio Tijerino, across social media channels. Also, I think it's under HHF across all the social media channels. And again, we appreciate so much the work that you're doing in our community and telling our stories and giving us a voice. that should never be looked over in terms of the power of media in telling our stories, and the right stories too. So appreciate you, Jens.
You're welcome, Antonio, and thanks again. Our community partner M&T Bank supports CEOs You Should Know as part of their ongoing commitment to building strong communities. And that starts by backing the businesses within them. As a bank for communities, M&T believes in dedicating time, talent, and resources to help local businesses thrive. Because when businesses succeed, our communities succeed.